Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson, and we're on location today in sunny Sebastopol, and I'm the guest of Larry Robinson, who's a city councilman and former mayor of Sebastopol. Thank you for having us here. It's nice
to Sebastopol.
To be welcomed. Larry, you've been involved with your city council here for what, 8 years, nearly 8 years, and particularly involved with initiatives around energy vulnerability for the city. Can you tell us what those those initiatives, and why you set out on that path?
Well, let me tell you the why and the how first, and then I can tell you what they are. For several years, I've been looking at energy use both on a personal level and on a societal level in terms of what that does to our culture, what our dependency on fossil fuels does to the climate. And one of the things that I discovered probably 3 or 4 years ago was this concept of an oil production peak. And several years ago I read a book by Tom Hartman called Last Days of Ancient Sunlight, which was a real wake-up call to me in terms of quantifying what I think I and many other people have sensed intuitively is happening in terms of our energy supply, and an indicator of what our vulnerability really is to a global energy supply line. And then my old friend Richard Heinberg, who I've known for many, many years as professor at New College in Santa Rosa, wrote his first book on it, The Party's Over.
Yeah.
And a number of other people in this community started talking about it, and we realized that it was an issue that we needed to begin talking about as a community and as a city government. So one of the first things we did was to host a town hall meeting. And as mayor last year, I had arranged a series of town hall meetings on various subjects that were of very pertinent interest to the community, but not part of our regular city business. And we wanted to take that out of the arena of a city council meeting and not utilize city resources and city staff, because our budget's very tight and our staff is already overloaded. But these are issues that are of great interest to the community. So the third town hall meeting that we did was on the issue of peak oil, and we had Richard give a keynote address, and then opened up the microphone to members of the community to share their concerns and ask questions.
How long ago was that?
That was, I believe, in October of last year, October of 2005.
Okay, so it's fairly recent.
Fairly recent.
Aha.
Yeah.
And so people came forward, your community, to the mic.
Yeah.
What did you hear?
Well, a wide range of things. Some apocalyptic visions, some technology will save us. I mean, really a wide spectrum of thoughts. But the predominant feeling was that this really is an opportunity for this community, as well as a potential threat. We had about 200 people there.
That's very impressive.
Which is a significant, I mean, our population is 7,800, so that's a
That's
significant
a good size,
percentage
yeah,
of our community. And quite a number of these people are already fairly familiar with the idea, because we had, about a month prior to that, Richard and I had both spoken at another gathering with about 100 people that was not sponsored by the city, but sponsored at a local farm. Our Solar Sebastopol program had also hosted an evening program on it, probably in July, I think. So there's some familiarity already. And one of the suggestions was that we begin developing a contingency plan for different events in the peak oil scenario.
Okay, so different possibilities in terms of shortages or price hikes.
Yeah. So what we did was to, and knowing that we don't have the staffing to do that kind of long-range contingency planning, we invited members of our community to apply for appointment to a citizens advisory group, which would then develop, we gave them four tasks. Task number one was to identify what our city, our municipal corporation's vulnerability to peak oil events are, in terms of being able to continue to provide the basic services that the city provides. And in our case, it's water, sewer, maintenance of our facilities, including streets, roads, and parks, and public safety.
Now, so a police or sheriff,
Police. We have our own police department, and we have a volunteer fire department.
Fire, okay. Alrighty.
So these are the core services. Now, another function of the city government is land use decisions, and that enters into this significantly too, in terms of long-range planning. So we asked this committee to look at all of these services in terms of how they would be impacted by, number one, gasoline costs at $5 a gallon, at $8 a gallon, and at $12 a gallon. These are just examples of what might be leading indicators of a peak oil event. And then what would happen with electricity at 25 cents a kilowatt hour and at 50 cents a kilowatt hour. Natural gas, they're looking at, but we figured that probably would be pretty much tied to the gasoline cost in some kind of ratio. So that was the first task, is to do that analysis. And the second was to develop a contingency plan for each city department in each of those eventualities.
Wow, that's a prodigious task. That's a lot of work here, thinking.
And number three is to essentially do the same thing for the bigger community, for not just the civic municipal corporation functions, but issues like transportation, like food supply, like social cohesion, business opportunity, hospital, healthcare. Yeah. So we want to concentrate on what the city's core services are first, get that report completed, and we appointed a citizens committee of 10 people early in January, and asked them to have a preliminary report ready for us by mid-June. At that point, we'll review the report. If there are questions, concerns, things that we need more elaboration on, we'll send it back to them, and they'll have a final report by August. That's the plan, and I think they're pretty much on target for that. Good. Then that's for the first two tasks.
The city core services.
Yeah. Then following that, they'll develop the analyses and contingency plans for the greater community issues. And then the fourth task is a public education campaign about how this might affect the whole community.
So how is this being funded? I mean, it's not coming from city funding, is that right? These are all volunteer
All volunteers.
committees, and that's true for the educational tasks as well. I mean, all the way along.
Yeah. City staff is providing information.
I'd expect they'd need that to
Yeah.
know, how many cop cars do you have, or
Exactly.
or how much water throughput or power do you use? Yeah.
Yeah. But they don't have any staff time available to them other than asking questions, duplicating materials. We can provide that, but essentially there's no cost to the city in that.
So what kind of challenges, hurdles are you running into with this, or are they yet? Or is it too soon to tell?
Well, it's probably too soon to tell all of them because
Yeah.
But it took a fair number of meetings to get some kind of coherence in this group, because these are 10 very talented, very informed, and independent thinking people. And they've all had their different ideas on how this task should be approached. And some of them, I think, have taken a more apocalyptic approach, a belief that Western civilization is going to collapse and we need to be prepared to recreate it from the ground up. That's certainly one possibility,
That's one scenario.
but I think it's much lower probability. I mean, when you travel in the third world, you see that people do get by on the kinds of energy availability that peak oil could cause here, and society functions. It doesn't descend into civil war. Well, can, but it doesn't necessarily do that.
That's true.
Some of these people are focused primarily on technical solutions like alternative fuels, alternative electrical generation, and that's our Solar Sebastopol project, which you referred to earlier.
Tell us what that is.
Okay, this Solar Sebastopol project is one we started several years ago, partnering with Sonoma State University's Energy Technology program and with several private photovoltaic contractors to do a public education program. The program started with the students from Sonoma State doing an assessment of the rooftop generating capabilities of the buildings in the city.
Of both business and city and residences?
Yes,
So the whole city?
And
Okay.
schools,
All
yeah.
right. Oh, schools.
And we established a goal of 3 megawatts of energy being generated within the city limits, and we're about a quarter of the way there.
It's an entirely volunteer program?
Yes.
Aha, okay.
But
People are doing it.
education based, yeah.
Yeah.
Originally, we had thought that the city could participate by providing low-cost loans that we would then fund through a revenue bond, because as a municipality we can issue municipal bonds at a lower rate than people can get on the open market. But since interest rates have been so low, there's really been no need to do that. And most of the installations have been so cost effective for people that they're essentially paying off the loan with the savings on their monthly bill.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, now has the city embarked on doing that for any of the city facilities?
Yes, we're saved. Let's see. we're saving about $20,000 a year on our own electrical costs from the installations that we've already made on our firehouse, on our public works building, and on our swimming pool. And sometime this summer we expect to install them on our police department, on the lift station where we pump our wastewater to the regional treatment facility.
So have they paid for themselves yet, or they'll pay for themselves fairly soon? I mean, it's...
Well, they haven't paid for themselves yet. We were expecting originally a payback period of 11 to 13 years, but now we're thinking it's probably going to be closer to 5 or 6 years.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, to cut that in half, I realize that one of the questions for our county has to do with that payback period, or the prospect that some newer, more efficient technology will be coming down the road, so let's wait.
Yeah.
What would you say to that kind of argument? You know, do it now, do it later. Certainly there are incentives for the state of California that you can...
Yeah, but the Million Solar Roofs
Right.
initiative,
Right.
It will extend the tax credits. I would encourage every municipality to do it now for several reasons. One, I think the cost savings will be worth it. Probably the material cost of the panels will drop over time, but you've also, in the meantime, been paying for electricity that you could have been generating yourself. The other reason is that California is facing a very serious electrical generation crisis. I mean, this summer, I think, well, there's only we're not building any new generating plants in
Right.
California.
Okay.
And there are only so many transmission lines coming into the state from outside, and the demand is growing.
Particularly for summer air conditioning,
Yes.
right? That's our most vulnerable time, as it was for the brownouts
Yes.
a couple of years ago.
And even Pacific Gas and Electric, which is the utility that supplies most of us in Northern California, is, I won't say in an emergency mode around this, but it certainly is working very, very hard to encourage customers, particularly business customers, to increase their efficiencies, because they're expecting shortages.
So the other reason for the city, or anyone to install, is to not be vulnerable to those
Exactly.
potential shortages or brownouts in the summer particularly.
Yes. For us, for instance, our water supply comes from the aquifer beneath us. We pump our water 600 feet up, and that's one of our biggest, well, it is our biggest electrical use, is powering those pumps. And now we can operate them any time of the day, because we pump them up from the ground and then up to storage tanks up in the hills, and then they are fed down to customers through gravity. But we could, if we had the photovoltaics in place for those pumps, we could pump them, pump the water during the day, even when it's during the day that the brownouts
That's right.
will be happening.
That's right. And that's when you get good power. I mean,
That's when you get good power from the sun.
For the photovoltaics.
Yeah.
Right.
Right now, there is a limitation of how much I'm not sure how to put this. The net metering regulation from the PUC limits how much the utility has to buy back from the customer. And aggregation at this point is not allowed. And we don't have the space at our wellheads. We don't have sufficient solar exposure at the wellheads to generate the electricity. But we do have enough sites elsewhere. But
So you'd feed it back into the grid,
Yeah.
right, from your other sites, and
but
it'd be credited towards.
right now, the law doesn't allow us to do it.
Ah.
So we're waiting on a ruling by the PUC on aggregation, which I'm hoping will go in our favor.
Which would help a lot of communities.
It would help a
I
lot.
would think so.
Well, the other, and if you could be paid for generating excess capacity, I think you'd see a lot more rooftop installations.
Particularly at the time of need. Here we are.
Exactly.
So, are there other aspects to your energy vulnerability projects or advice that you'd give to city council members or county anywhere? You'd say, install your photovoltaics now, and probably take an assessment now. I mean, start to look at where you'll be vulnerable.
Yeah, I would say that you don't want to be in the situation of being able to say, no one told us the levees would fail, right? No one told us we were running out of energy, because they have been telling us. We do know. And voters are going to hold us accountable if we ignore this. There's very little downside to developing a contingency plan that you may never use. There's a huge downside in not developing a contingency plan that you may need. It's not that different from developing an emergency response plan for an earthquake. And anybody who lives in California knows that, certainly in my lifetime, we're going to get another major quake.
We already have. We were in the Loma Prieta quake, and it looked to be a good one, and it was.
Yes.
Well,
I think we're.
we may have another
gonna be
one
looking
coming up.
At another one in the next 30 years. It's pretty statistically, we know that the odds are very high we're going to get another one.
And what you're saying as well is that we know that we're not going to be having oil here forever.
Exactly.
The prices are already volatile.
Yeah.
And rising. So
we have to develop our budgets, our city budgets, our county budgets, in a way that anticipates those potential sharp price increases, shortages. We may find ourselves having to buy our transportation fuel at a time when there is a major shortage. I mean, I think we're going to see intermittent shortages, much like we did in 1973. And we need to have some kind of reserve capacity, both in our budgets and in our storage facilities.
just switching for just the last couple of minutes that we have, just back to sort of the personal level. You've obviously thought about this possibility here, the possible futures. Do you have any sense of how might people respond? How do we sort of look at this? Because the range of attitudes can be anywhere from doom and gloom to tentative hope. What do you picture? Or what do you hope for, perhaps?
Well, what I hope for is that it can bring us back into a greater relationship with each other locally, a greater connection to the place where we're located. I think it can remind us of our interconnection with each other and our absolute dependence on this beautiful, generous planet, and that we are not, that we're not in control. Now, I also see
Katrina reminded us of that one,
exactly.
I think.
But I also see tremendous business opportunities for people who have the foresight to anticipate the shift in how we do business in this world. I mean, right now, most of the consumer goods we buy come from China, Malaysia,
Right.
Latin America, a long way
Right.
away, where labor is cheap. That's because of that. But the reason that cheap labor makes a difference is because of cheap energy to transport the goods that are manufactured with cheap labor. As transportation costs rise, that's
gonna shift the balance here.
exactly.
Yeah.
So manufacturing will be coming back, and first it will be the higher ticket items, and eventually I think we'll see things like shoes and clothing being made domestically again. Certainly food is something we need very much to be concerned about, and those of us living in California, I think, are very, very fortunate. We have, the Central Valley is still the world's breadbasket, and even with transportation fuel shortages, we will be able to get food. In Sebastopol in particular, I think we feel very, very fortunate that we're surrounded by very rich farmland. We have a very mild climate. We have good water. We still have farmers who know how to grow food.
You are very fortunate. I noticed as I drove in.
Yeah.
It's like, you'll eat.
Yeah.
You'll eat well here. You're very blessed that way. This has been fascinating. We have about 10 seconds left. Any last little thoughts that we can, gems to sum up?
Well, yes. Advice from Wendell Berry, poet, who says, "Be joyful though you have considered all the facts."
Thank you. Thank you. My guest is Larry Robinson, former mayor of Sebastopol. This is Peak Moment, community responses to a changing energy future. Join us for the next episode. Thanks.